we'll just get started.
Okay.
Do you care if I end up posting this on YouTube?
No.
Audio? Okay. I don't always do that, but depends on the conversation, everything. All right,
No,
here
that's
we
fine.
go. 3, 2, 1. Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Set Listing Bruce, your podcast all about Bruce Springsteen, his music, and mostly his fans. I am your host, Jesse Jackson, and joining me today is Dustin. Welcome to the jungle. Welcome to the podcast. It's
Thanks, Jesse,
time.
for having me. You
It's
know,
time. Yes, go ahead.
when I accepted this booking, I
Yeah.
got to say this isn't the Jesse Jackson I had in mind. Uh,
Uh,
but whatever.
no, I do feel like that. True story, Dustin. Um, when uh, my wife and I got married in '84, and we lived in a small town called Lake Charles, Louisiana. And
Oh,
Linda,
you're close to my neck of the woods, then.
oh, what's that?
I'm originally from Tupelo, Mississippi, but we would go to Biloxi a lot to hang
Yeah,
out because nothing good ever happened where I'm from.
right. And so he, she called to the tuck shop and said, Jesse,
What?
yeah, the tuxedo shop,
Oh, okay.
because we were going to get married. And she said, Jesse Jackson's supposed to be there. Jesse Jackson, he's in town.
Did
And,
they roll out the red carpet?
yeah, and my wife was like, sad to say, no, that isn't the Jesse Jackson. So, and true story, Justin, when he was running for president, I called Austin to make a hotel reservation. I go, hi, this is Jesse Jackson. I need to book a hotel reservation. And like, oh, we'll be glad to help you, Mr. Jackson. And after a few minutes, she goes, don't you normally have someone that does this for you, Reverend? I'm like, no, I am a Jesse Jackson. I am not the Jesse Jackson. I often joke if I'm in front of a live audience, he's out of the news a lot more now, but back then I would often go, hi, I'm Jesse Jackson. I look different than I do on TV. You're used to seeing me on a black and white set.
You know what's funny? In real life, I hang out with probably, and this isn't by design, it's
Yeah,
just, you meet people and then certain groups of people pull you into their group every time, no matter where you go, like
yeah,
without any kind of effort. You're always going to end up
right.
kind of getting drawn into a group of people one way or the other, no matter where you go.
Mhm.
I've moved across the goddamn country. Oh, sorry, the dang country.
It's all right.
And I'm sorry, I've got a big note that says don't cuss for the show. And,
That's
and
okay.
right off the bat, I moved from Mississippi to Jefferson City, Missouri.
Okay.
And still, the vast majority of people I end up hanging out with are black folks.
Okay.
And one thing I've seen in real life is and this is just the ones I've talked to. I'm not
Right.
racially dividing anybody or trying to
Right.
start that kind of conversation or anything like that. But when it comes to Jesse Jackson, inside I hate to say the black community as a large, because I'm obviously not a part of that community, but I'm definitely friends with a lot of people that are. And the thing I keep seeing when it comes to Jesse Jackson, when he comes up in conversation, I have never honestly in real life met a black person that likes Jesse Jackson that doesn't have their own TV show.
Oh,
Like,
okay. How funny.
I'm just saying, not saying everybody.
Yeah.
I'm saying the people that I've met and
Yes.
the people that I've hung out with. Most people think he's a they think he makes his living off of someone else's suffering.
Yes.
And I get that a lot, and I can't in good conscience condone that, but I don't see the other side of it. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
And
It's hard for me to comment on those kind of issues because I'm not, as bad as I hate to say it, I mean, it's true. I'm not directly affected by them.
yeah. And what's interesting, Dustin, is you being aware of that puts you ahead of, unfortunately, a lot of people that um, we're that I sometimes have a trouble talking to, I'm a 61-year-old white guy. I was born in Louisiana.
Really? I was guessing like 40 something. So
No,
good
no,
luck.
I'm 61. I was born in 1959. The
Shit. I
Eisenhower
mean,
administration.
darn.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey.
So I know my life experiences, I see things totally different than, even my son or someone else, right? It is just do that. And for you to be aware of that just alone says, you're a good dude and you're just trying to do the best you can.
I
So
hope everybody is.
I hope so too. So you mentioned grew up in Mississippi. Um, I haven't even given you a chance. Give your elevator pitch. Talk.
My elevator pitch.
Who are
Oh,
you and what are you doing?
it's bad. I don't know the elevator pitch from the podcast, but I do know the elevator pitch from my real job. So here we
Okay,
go.
that's good.
I've never done an elevator pitch for Guns and Radio, but here we're going to try.
All right.
And first off, I need to apologize to your audience because I know I sound like crap tonight, but I'm sick and I'm doing my best to get through it. So
Well, luckily you're using Guinness to try to,
I
help your
am.
sinus.
I am.
We are
And
recording this on St. Patrick's Day.
it is. We're taping this on St. Patty's Day, and this is my third whiskey tonight. So if I would have done this an hour ago, I probably wouldn't have gotten this far. So without coughing. So
Okay.
elevator pitch, Guns and Radio. Okay, guys, my name is Dustin Burcham. My real name is Dustin Burcham. My stage name, my podcast name, whatever it's called in this field, I do not know. I am not. I'm an amateur stuck in a world of people who are much better at what they do than I am. But my podcast is called Guns and Radio. I host it with my friend Chris Caputo, who I've never actually met in real life. He's from Toronto, Canada. I'm originally from Tupelo, Mississippi, by way of Jefferson City, Missouri. Each and every week, we have a giant wheel, if you will, more like a lottery. We say a wheel because it's audio, nobody can see us anyway. So the visual of a giant wheel is much better sounding than the fact that we just have names being drawn randomly out of a hat. Each and every week, we randomly pick a song by Guns N' Roses, Velvet Revolver, Duff McKagan's Loaded / featuring Miles Kennedy, the Juju Hounds, or any of the bands or solo projects from the original 5 members of GNR. We choose one song every week. We break that song down, we listen to it, we review it, and we give it a rating. If it sounds like the Pod of Thunder podcast, which is a Kiss podcast that I am in no way affiliated with, that's because it's a direct ripoff of Pod of Thunder. And we say that in the first episode. Now, in episode 8, I think we're on our 91st episode now, so it gets a little fuzzy. And I think within the first 10 episodes, the guys from Pod of Thunder came on to our show. They heard about us ripping them off. They listened to the show. They liked it. They contacted with us. They came on the show. They gave us their blessing to rip off their show. So now I'm going to call it a spinoff of Pod of Thunder, even though I'm in no way affiliated with them.
So in the It's a Small World, J.B. Clark, who also was from Tupelo, Mississippi, and Rob Carmack do Bruce Springsteen Sings the Alphabet podcast, where they took every Bruce Springsteen song and talked about it in alphabetical order.
Nice.
They did not do it random. And they said in their very first podcast that there is alphabetical Beatles, which was a bunch of guys going through every Beatles song in alphabetical order. And they reached out to them and said, will you be offended if we steal this format? And they said, one, give us, share that, we inspired you. And 2, you got to finish. You can't stop. All right. And so, and now then the alphabetical Beatles has finished, but JB and Rob have gone through They went through a whole season. They went through every song. Then their second season was they went through every album in chronological order, talking about every song and with a different context, right? Like it's a different discussion, the song by itself, compared to what it is on like the album. And now
Okay.
then the third season, Bruce has now released a couple of albums. They're going to go back and catch that. So
It's
I am,
interesting.
yes.
It's interesting to me that you bring to me both Bruce Springsteen and the Beatles, because here's what I
Yes.
hear.
Okay.
Bruce Springsteen is a guy I'm a casual fan of, don't know more than, of course, the hits they play on the radio, and the one that we're going to talk about a little later tonight that I heard for the first time tonight, which, by the way, opened my eyes to I need to dig a little deeper into this library. Uh,
I have a
anyway,
proposal for you in a little bit, Dustin.
okay.
That's a tease. Okay.
Okay. Over here on this hand, I've got Bruce Springsteen, who, even though I know maybe 3 songs max by, I consider one of the greatest artists in rock and roll. And over here, in this hand, I've got the Beatles. Now, there's an old saying, you can want in one hand and crap in the other.
Hmm.
And I'm immediately reminded of that because over here is Bruce Springsteen and over here is the crap.
You are
And
not a Beatles fan.
I despise the Beatles. Anybody that listens to my podcast, I've pissed off every Beatles fan in the world at least once, and
That's
Nirvana.
funny.
There's 2
Yeah.
bands I absolutely hate. And,
Mhm.
and that's the Beatles and Nirvana. I think the Beatles are the most overrated band in the world. Now, I think, granted, considering that back in the day before the Beatles came along, all you really had was Teen Angel, and not a boring crap. But then, like, here comes the Beatles, and all of a sudden, here's decent music to the ears of somebody who'd never heard decent music before. Yeah, I get it. But when but fast forward to this year when we've had decent music come and go at this
Mhm.
point, the Beatles are far at the bottom of that list,
So,
second only
uh,
to Nirvana.
so what's what I'm going to propose and be thinking about this is I talked about my How Many podcast where we talk about different artists and bands, and it is very clear. I graduated high school in '77, um, and I kind of quit listening to music a lot in the '80s. So,
Well, I mean, you
uh,
didn't have anything good come out since what,
yeah.
92?
So, um, you put $100,000 in front of me and say name 10 Guns N' Roses songs, and I could not do it without a
Oh,
computer.
well, we can fix that tonight. I'm going to open your eyes to some
So,
beauty.
so what's interesting is I had a guy, and that's one of my catchphrases. What's
You see
interesting?
what I did though there? I
Yeah,
took the thing where I said I was right about your thing that
yeah.
you like, and I crapped on it, and and then I took. But I'm going to show you why I'm right about my thing. That's me being a jerk, and I
No,
want
not being a jerk at all. So,
I
so
want to say though the whole Beatles thing.
yeah.
Like, yes, it's true. I do hate the Beatles, but I really play it up just
Sure,
for.
absolutely. Yeah, it's shtick. Well, that's like I put down. There is the local sports station had a thing called Bands of Your Lives, and there was 11 questions, and the first 2 questions was band you hate and band you don't get, and I said, um, you know, band you hate and band you just don't understand or you think is overrated. That was it, and I said
I
Led
think you don't
Zeppelin.
get is a good topic.
Yeah, Led Zeppelin and you know, Grateful Dead. I just don't get them. And
I
my
don't. That's
yeah,
very good. I don't get Grateful Dead either.
so and my friends, like when we have specifically talked about Guns N' Roses, they're like, how do you not know these? Like, because it's like Guns N' Roses has 30 hits, and so David Fetter was on the podcast about a month ago, and he does a Bee Gees podcast. And
Nice.
yeah, and his
Talk
like
about fucking or freaking
yeah,
explicit, or what am I thinking? Deep cuts. Like, they
exactly.
got one hit.
And that's what he talked about. He said that Bruce and the Bee Gees have something in common. If someone says I don't like Bruce Springsteen, my first question is, have you ever listened to anything besides Born in the USA CD? And he says, and if someone says I don't like the Bee Gees, have you ever listened to anything besides Saturday Night Fever? Right? So
Yeah.
he sent me 10 Bee Gees songs that I didn't know. He said, here are 10 songs you probably don't know. And then I sent him 10 Springsteen songs he probably didn't know. And we each picked 5. And we did a follow-up podcast where we played a clip of the song. You discussed, this is why I picked this song. This is why I like it. This is what I didn't like about it. Then I would do that. So I propose that would be interesting for us to do, like maybe in 4 to 6 weeks, like, we could follow up. And that way, because you just said, oh, I can blow your mind. I can give you songs that you wouldn't thought of.
I can give you a Guns N' Roses song. I can give you at least 3 that I know you've never heard of. And if you listen to them and really listen to them, and they don't, and I don't care if you're the surliest, meanest, baddest man on the planet, I can give you 3 Guns N' Roses songs. This band that's known for cocaine, fire, and piss. And I can give you 3 songs by them. And I don't care how mean and how rough and how whatever you are, if you do not have tears in your eyes by the time those songs are over, I don't think you would have a soul.
All right. I love that. All right. So we're going to do that, Dustin. Growing up, I always like to start at the beginning. What kind of was your family into music? Was there a lot of music on the radio? You're with your parents? Did you have siblings? Talk about that a little bit.
Well, I don't talk too much about my older days, mainly because I'm going to be honest. I've been drinking, so you're going to get something I wouldn't give nobody else. I was born into a highly conservative Christian family. My father plays bass, and now he plays guitar, and he can play one of the meanest guitars I have ever heard in my life. But he's weird because he can't do it if anybody's watching. Like if I sneak into his house when he don't know I'm coming in, you'll hear him in there shredding, and he plays the blues, and you'll hear him in there shredding like he should be somebody famous. And then as soon as he knows somebody's listening, he starts screwing up. And he would be pissed if he heard me tell that. But he don't know really much about technology, so he ain't gonna be listening.
Okay, Dustin's dad. We're not talking about you.
No, I love my dad. My dad's one of my heroes in life.
Yeah.
But I was born into a insanely Christian conservative home. They didn't let me listen to any kind of music that wasn't like Bill Gaither freaking gospel. And I'm talking about Southern Quartet, like I'll fly away, oh glory.
Yeah. Yeah, I was raised Southern Baptist.
Okay, that kind of BS. I got you beat. I was raised Pentecostal. Top that.
Yes, exactly.
And my dad always played bass. He always played at church. There's a lot of things, and I'm not mad about it. I am mad about it, but I've given myself the excuse that my family didn't know any better.
Yeah, it's that famous Maya Angelou, quote, like when I knew better, I did better, right?
Yeah.
And so exactly.
So I give my family that excuse so that I can kind of try to what's the word I'm looking for? Therapy, and move on from the mental damage and scars that I have.
So I don't know
religion.
I don't want to get in a world of got you, but one of my mom's favorite sayings was, I would kill you if I could afford to bury you.
My grandma told me once, if you kill yourself, I'll bury you.
But they meant that with love in their heart, right?
No, she was pissed off when she said that. I mean, let me tell you right now, she's one of the sweetest old ladies.
I understand.
I went through a bit of a dick phase in my younger days. I have a freaking long story, but I calmed down over time. If you hear some thunder, I apologize. It's stormy outside
Okay.
and I'm sick, so I need the window open to
No,
be
you're
able to
good.
get
You're
breathe.
good.
Um, but no, I was raised very Pentecostal, very if it ain't this kind of gospel, it's devil worship.
Right.
The satanic cult BS frenzy of the 80s, that we, you know what I'm talking about, the how in the 80s everything was some kind of satanic cult was coming for
Yes.
your kids and all that bull crap.
Yeah.
Being from Mississippi, that crap continued into into the 90s because we're
Yes.
so damn backwards.
Right.
And like I said, I get emotional and I get ticked off when I really talk about it a lot, but I do my best to remind myself my family just didn't know any better. And whoa, sorry,
No, you're good.
I don't know if you heard that or not,
I
but there
did.
was a
It's like a giant is hungry and his stomach is growling, like, oh, want to eat.
yeah. So I do my best to give my family the excuse that they didn't know any better, because after they figured out that their constant pressure, whippings, whatever they needed to do, whatever they
Yeah.
felt like they needed to do, when they figured out that all it did was drove me away,
Yeah.
like I didn't speak to my family for a few years after
Mm,
I turned 18.
yeah.
Like I started going through a rebellious stage in high school, and I'm sure we'll get to that in a little bit when we start talking about other topics here that we talked about in the pre-interview. And
Yeah.
um, um, and I think that pushing me away changed, but at the same time, it made me the man I am today. Like
Sure.
it made me smart enough to be able to say, "Hey, I don't believe this bullcrap that my family is teaching me. I don't want to accept that there is no God, but I don't. But I mean, it's a possibility."
Right.
And there was a point where I was even an atheist for a few years. And of all things, this is weird. Science changed my mind about that. I went to college, which a lot of my family hasn't done.
Yeah.
And when I went to college, I excelled in physics. That
Okay.
was my favorite subject. But in going into physics, you got to remember, this is backwoods Mississippi. Your high school science class is God made birds. Like you know what
Yes.
I'm saying? Like, so then you get to college and you get into some real science from a guy that was a nerd growing up that was craving that. And you're like, okay, this God crap, but how does it really work? And then you get into that. And then to me, there were questions I had for physics that my teacher of all people, my professor, loved talking to me. She hated me my first 6 weeks until we had our first exams, and I was the only person that aced it.
Mhm.
And because she thought I was a smart ass because I was always coming to school stoned and asking 100 million questions. And then when the test came, I aced it. And so we would have after class discussions. She would tell me to save it for after class if I had a question. And uh, some things in the world and the universe just doesn't make sense to me without some kind of creation. And
It's interesting. So, when did you talked about as being a teenager and rebelling? When did you find, not just in, we're going to get to Guns N' Roses in a minute, but secular music? I'll put that umbrella, not necessarily rock and roll, but secular music, right? Like,
oh, I went straight to rock and roll.
okay.
I gravitated immediately to rock and roll, and I remember the moment I discovered rock and roll. Because keep in mind, I wasn't allowed to listen to the radio. At one point, my mom was like telling my dad that, listen, we got to let him listen to the other shit that kids listen to, or he's never gonna, and maybe that'll help him stop being so rebellious against it. And really, I was just smarter than them. I hate to say it, but
Yeah.
that was her thinking, was that if we listen, let him listen. So then I had my mom, who don't know what the kids like, trying to pick the music that I'm allowed to listen to. So in all of these Bill Gaither and gospel CDs and stuff that I had in my collection that I never freaking listened to, by the way, I hated music before I discovered rock and roll.
Mm.
There was one Britney Spears record in
Well,
there.
the kids like that.
Yeah.
Dustin's going to like Britney Spears. Look how pretty she is.
And I will admit, there's two songs I liked on that record, and neither one of them I ever heard on the radio.
Okay.
I wouldn't dare tell you what they are. You'll just have to buy the record and see if you
Okay.
can guess. It was the first one, the pink one.
Sure.
I don't remember what it was called. It
Okay.
was just, I remember it was pink and it had her on the front.
How
But
funny.
the when I discovered rock and roll, this is when the devil came in and he took my soul, according to my family. This is the moment it happened. I went down to the crossroads behind my house and I took my guitar and I said, "Oh, great Satan, appear before." No, I'm fucking with. I'm kidding.
Yeah.
No, seriously. This is honestly what happened. This is the exact moment. We lived in the middle of nowhere, and one circumstance is a long story, but we ended up at one point in my life living with my great grandmother,
Okay.
who was also extremely Christian, extremely wanted to brainwash me into this way my family believes, but at the same time was smarter than the rest of my family.
Okay.
My great grandmother was the only friend I had for a little while, for many years, and uh, that's a sore subject also, because when she passed away, that's one I never really got over.
Okay.
But to move the conversation forward to rock and roll, we lived with her for a few years, and there were two barns. We lived in the middle of nowhere. We lived in the middle of the freaking woods.
Yeah.
And I have muted my phone like 14 times, and I still keep getting text messages. Give me just a second. Let me just turn the damn thing off.
Okay.
But we lived in the middle of the freaking woods, and we had two old barns that we didn't really use for anything. One, my dad straight up gave me that me and some friends of mine, we thought it was cool because we had our own clubhouse, basically, with a He-Man Woman Haters Club. But the other one was behind the house, and inside of it, my dad kept his fishing boat. And so my dad's fishing boat, something happened one day. I don't remember what led me to being inside of dad's boat barn shed thing, but something led me there. Now, this barn has been there for like a freaking 100 years before I was ever even thought, before my dad was ever even a thought. Like these barns we were playing in, we would be up in the loft falling with like, and the board would break and we'd get a leg through all the time. We didn't even have a ladder to get up to the loft. We climbed up the side of the loft. Like this was a whole different time. It was crazy. But this barn in the backyard where my dad kept his boat, one day, I don't know what I was doing, but I was piffing around out there. And up in the top of almost the roof, there was like where the roof comes in like this. And there was like a kind of a little bitty ledge. And I saw something plastic caught my eye sticking out of that ledge. And I reached up and I took it. And it was a cassette tape that had obviously been there for many, many years. It was covered in dust and grass, and I blew it off. And it was AC/DC. And I go, "What's this?" Probably one of my dad's brothers hiding it from grandma back in the day. And it was AC/DC's Back in Black.
Okay.
And that was my first rock album.
How funny.
That was when I went from hating music to loving music to knowing that I can never let anybody know I have this tape. This was under my pillow, hidden away from the family.
Yeah, like some guys might hide, cigarettes or a Playboy. You've got this AC/DC cassette, like, shh.
And, I did all of that.
I understand. I didn't think you might. And to keep it biblical, right? That was your road to Damascus moment, right? You were you were Saul, and all of a sudden the light came in and you became Paul.
It really was. I mean,
Yeah.
it's weird to think about that. I mean, and now that I'm sitting here and actually pondering on it, that one random ass day in Mississippi of me just going about, oh geez, sorry,
No,
thunder,
that's it. Yeah.
of me just going about my life, changed my life and changed who. If I had never stumbled onto that tape,
Yeah.
I mean, I probably would have discovered it, but then I would be older, and
Yeah.
it's just weird to think about how different my life would be if it wasn't for that one little weird moment that came along in my life.
So I usually ask this to my guests that are Bruce fans, and and I understand if you can't articulate this, though you've done a great job articulating. When did you discover Guns N' Roses, and what about the music spoke to you in such a way that you are now doing a podcast about them? Obviously, there there must be something about their music that
Oh yeah,
spoke to you.
there's a lot. I mean,
Hey,
good
we've got
lord,
time.
I got the. I don't know if you can see that or
Yeah, we did.
not. I got the. Um, I've always been. Sorry.
That's close. Do you need to go? We can always
No,
reschedule. Okay, we're good.
no. I live in the middle of the city. If it gets too bad, the sirens will go
Okay,
off. And
okay. Just want
yeah,
to let you know. Okay.
it just scared me. That's all.
Yeah, no, yeah.
I'm gonna close this a little bit just so I
Okay.
can kind of get the breeze, and I'm gonna pull down the
Okay.
curtains so that the lightning will quit distracting me.
Okay, no problem.
Oh, Guns N' Roses, man, this is a hard one. I've always been a casual fan of GNR.
Okay.
When I was, I want to say 12, maybe 13. It's weird how you remember things because if I tried to do the math, I would be either a hell of a lot younger or a hell of a
Yeah.
lot older than I'm remembering. But a friend of mine had a tape, a VHS tape. We didn't call them VHS back then. We just called them tapes.
Yeah.
But a friend of mine had a tape, and he said, I went to his house, and he said, have you ever heard of Guns N' Roses? Because now this is old. This is back in the day when the fact that they're saying dirty words is enough to catch our attention.
Yes.
And the tape was, it turns out, was Tokyo, Japan, Use Your Illusion 1 from 1992, I believe.
Okay.
There was a 2 tape set. He had the first tape on a tape that had been copied from a tape that had been copied from a tape that had been copied that he gave me and said, check this out. I think you'll like it. And then he gave it to me and told me I could have it. So I went home and listened to it and I watched it. And the first thing, because coming from the life and the way I was raised, where everything you do, anything that'll bring you any kind of remote pleasure seems to end in eternal damnation and hellfire and brimstone. And
Well, just while you're
then,
thinking, I remember, um, Three Dog Night, the joy to the world, and he always had some mighty good wine. You couldn't sing that, right? Like,
yeah,
as that's a nasty lyric, growing up in a Baptist, right? Oh, like, because and people don't understand
they
and
don't.
aren't raised in that at my household, if you have a drink of beer or a glass of wine,
You
your
better repent.
your next step is you're a drunk in the gutter.
There's no middle ground.
There isn't, like, you have one sip, the next step you are in the gutter, just
shooting up and
yeah, exactly. Like, you are just you are you are the prodigal son living with pigs, that you just they're just, I mean, it goes straight to the gutter. Do not pass go. Do
yeah,
not collect your soul. It is like, and it was so strange when I started dating my wife, she was Catholic, and at 12 they're having wine at dinner. I mean, just small glasses of
Of
wine, right?
course.
Right. And for the funny thing, Dustin, right? For the long time, she didn't trust me because I didn't drink.
Oh,
I never drank. That was not something I didn't, I never rebelled that way. And it wasn't until she realized, hey, I have a built-in designated driver. Maybe this guy isn't so bad.
my
So,
best friend and my best friend in the whole world is a guy named Michael Rees. He's never been
yeah.
on my podcast. He's never been anything related to
Hmm.
media that I've done. He's made appearances, but not in a
Yeah.
long time. But in real life, my best friend in the world is a guy named Michael Rees. And when people ask, like, uh, people that know me in Mississippi
Yeah.
think of me as part of a duo, like Beavis and Butthead. Like
Yeah.
if somebody sees me in Mississippi, and the first question I always get is, "Where's Reese?" Because like
Yes.
people are
Okay.
so
Got it.
used to us being together. Jesus. But anyway, he when we first started hanging out was in college, and the thing that I tell people, which is kind of BS, but it sounds good, it sounds funny when people ask, "How did you guys become good friends?" I like to drink, he likes to drive. We've been best friends since college.
There you go. Perfect. Back. Yeah. So anyway, not to get you off on a tangent. It's okay. So um, you're you discover, a tape of a tape of a tape of
Yeah,
Guns N'
of Guns N'
Roses,
Roses.
and for some reason it speaks to you.
It I think here's what's funny. You want to know who the last person's name I learned in the band was?
Too.
Axel.
Okay.
Because Axel in the tape introduces everybody else and
Right.
nobody introduces Axel.
Right.
Uh I liked when I was little Todd or fucking oh, shoot, what was his name? Teddy Zigzag
Hmm.
was I thought he was a legitimate member of the band when I
Hmm.
was little because but I liked him because I thought he looked like a pirate because he wore the fluffy
Yeah.
frilly shirt and his song that opens with him on the harmonica was my favorite part of the tape and it's still one of my favorite songs. um it starts I can't stop thinking and then the song um uh Jesus Christ, I'm drawing like can't stop thinking about sinking. Give me a second. Bad Obsession is the name of the song.
Hmm.
And when I'm a kid, I'm like, I don't know all the words he's saying because, he's singing and I can't understand everything he's saying. Uh, uh, but it turns out the song is about shooting up and doing heroin.
Okay.
And, I never knew that as a kid. I just thought it was a catchy, fun song and had a
Hmm.
cool harmonica at the front
Sure.
of it. But I would later go on when I met a guy at work named Rick Dunsford. And if you're inside the Guns N' Roses community, you know that name, especially the online community.
Okay.
With the leaks and everything that's been going on lately, you know Rick's name. Uh, I did not. I met Rick at work.
Okay.
They set me down at the time I was doing a stupid little YouTube show and they brought me into work and they sat me down at what will be my new cubicle and he turns around and he's right beside me and he's all excited to meet me and he knows about what I do on the internet and all this other shit and so I'm like okay, I didn't know what
Hmm.
to say to that. Well, he and I became best of friends and he was a diehard Guns N' Roses, is still today a diehard Guns N' Roses fan. I was still a casual fan at the time. And he had a lot to do with getting me into the community. I mean, I came in late I missed out on a lot of things. I missed out on the entire Chinese democracy waiting for the album era.
Okay.
But when I started running with him, we started following them. That was the first time I made enough money I made grown ass adult money, as I call it, for the first time in my life. And I was able to afford to follow this band on tour. And after, I would say it took one show, even without the original lineup, even without the follow up to the original lineup, like this lineup had changed like 6 times by the time I saw them.
Mm-hmm.
And even with that lineup, with those songs, man, just something about it like would make me want to dance, cry, fight, whatever they were going for. I was easily manipulated by this band. And I remembered like it was a blend of stuff that I'd never heard mixed with a blend of things that I remember from when I was a kid and I had that tape.
Mm-hmm.
And Chinese Democracy is probably my favorite Guns N' Roses album, second only to Appetite by Destruction for Destruction.
Okay.
Um, those two records, Use Your Illusion is great, and Lies is great. I mean, their worst song I think is okay,
Mm-hmm.
but it just I think part of what gets it for me. And with the way I was raised that you got to be a man. You can't show any kind of emotion. You can't, like, you've got one of two modes. You got angry or you got working.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that was all you were allowed to be, angry or work it, or you were gay.
Mm-hmm.
That's just how the people in the South in the 90s saw it.
Right.
But Guns N' Roses, they lure you in with the angry songs. For me, they brought me in with the angry songs. Out to Get Me, Night Train, uh, My Michelle, Dead Horse, like the Stomper songs, Welcome to the Jungle. Even they lure you in with those those angry rage, energy
Mm-hmm.
filled bangers. But then they give you songs like Catcher in the Rye, This I Love, November Rain, and Estranged, that by the time you get to those songs, you've experienced the rage and the energy and that side of the coin that is the band, that then in turn, at least for me, felt like it gave me permission to feel vulnerable.
Okay. That's interesting. I always preface this question, Dustin, with the amount of times you've seen a band live is not a fair barometer of how big of a fan you are. Specifically, like, Bruce Springsteen, he's been in since the 70s. If you lived in the East Coast, and you've discovered him in 75, 76, and you live in Jersey, New York, Philly, the chance to see him, multiple times.
Yeah.
But for the record, um, like I said, it's not a fair barometer of how big of a fan you are, but how many times have you seen them live? And do you count?
14.
14. Okay.
And I have tickets to my 15th show already purchased for hopefully by then I'll have my damn COVID shot if this
Okay.
cold goes away.
Okay. Where are they going to perform? Where are they performing?
Chicago, Illinois.
Okay.
I've seen them in Chicago once before.
Okay.
They did a small state, I wouldn't say stadium, but a small club tour back in 2012 called Once in a Lifetime. I went twice
Okay.
because the clubs they were playing in were so small that tickets went so fast. Uh, I had a friend on the inside, shout out, that made it possible
Okay.
for me to get to go twice. So this will be my second time seeing them in Chicago,
Okay.
and I'm really excited about it because it's really important to me because my girlfriend is going with me to this one.
Mhm.
And everybody that's a major player in my life, other than like my dad and my mom, for
Yeah.
example, but all my best friends who, if I were going to take over the world, these would be the generals in my army,
Yeah.
have seen Guns N' Roses with me at least once.
Okay.
And some it takes, some they don't care for.
Right.
Because it is at the end of the day just another freaking band. I
Well,
often
and
forget that, but
so, right, like I say, there's two kinds of people in the world: the people that go to their first Bruce Springsteen show and go, "Damn, that was long," and the others that go, "Oh my goodness, when can I see him again?" Right. So So talk to me. You've talked a little bit already, but um, Guns and Guns and Radio is the podcast. What what made you? It sounds like you were already doing something with social media, with either YouTube or other stuff. So talk to me about kind of your background and why did you decide to do a GNR podcast?
Well, I've done other podcasts and various shows in the past on both YouTube, Blog TV, if anybody out there remembers that.
Hmm.
I used to get, which was where a lot of my success was, I used to get 10,000 people watching me live every week.
Wow.
That number would go up and down because they were live, but it never went under 10 back in the day. That was probably the peak of my success. But they also Blog TV liked my show and they put me on the front page every week. So I can't take credit for that. It's cheating. But I started out in the wrestling business. I
Okay.
got into the wrestling business when I was 16. I lied about my age, and it's a lot. That's a whole other story. But I feel like that's where I got a lot of my chops for being able, because I used to do commentary and things like that. So that also helped me get my chops up to be ready to podcast and stuff like that in its own way. Not saying I'm the greatest. I'm not saying I'm great at all. I'm not even saying I'm okay, but I mean, I have fun. So that's
What
all
kind
I
of
really.
wrestling did you cover?
Professional wrestling.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I meant. Like WCW,
No, 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 no.
WWF.
We had our own promotion.
Okay.
We had
Okay.
our own local promotion. I snuck in to keep that part of the story brief. I went when I got my driver's license at 16. Wrestling was the devil. That was another thing. I was devil
Sure. Of
worship. I
course.
wasn't.
Everything's the devil. Right.
Yeah, I wasn't
Going to the
allowed
movie
to.
theater on Sundays would be the devil.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
So I wasn't allowed to watch wrestling in the 90s. But when I got my driver's license, by then I figured out that, you know what, mama don't know won't hurt her, and mama don't know what I'm doing. So,
Right.
I mean, for lack of a better word, screw her. Uh, I almost said the F word. See, I'm doing good. I'm looking
You're
at my
doing
don't
great.
cuss sign
You're
over
doing great, Dustin. You are
here.
doing great.
But anyway, my first time I went, I had $5 in my pocket, and the second time I went, I figured out, there's a door over there that looks like it leads to outside, and I don't see any of these security guards watching it, so I snuck in. And this was immediate. This was my first weekend as a free man driving his car for the first time.
Okay.
That my grandpa gave me, because shout out to Papa, he was always good in all this BS. He was kind of the what do you call it, the one that was reasonable.
Okay.
But my first weekend out, I paid $5 and went to see wrestling. My second weekend out, I didn't have $5, but I noticed there wasn't any security guards watching this door, so I came in that door. My third my third weekend, I wanted to meet some wrestlers, so I made a bull. This is so stupid. I made a BS pass and put it around my neck and walked around in the back, acting like I was interviewing people and taking pictures. And my fourth week, I tried that again, and they figured out I didn't. Nobody hired me,
Yeah.
but they'd already saw the pictures I was taking, and they really wanted to use those. So I ended up getting a job putting together a website, and then one thing led to another. I eventually found a promoter and lied and said I was an announcer, and because an announcer didn't show up, and that was total BS. I just happened to be at that show. Wasn't even the show I would end up being familiar with.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, one thing led to another, that led to another, that led to
Okay.
another, that led to me being in that full time. I got mad. I used to have a really bad temper back in the wrestling
Okay.
business. Uh, I was known for having a bad temper, but I was known for drawing money.
Okay.
So people put up with my crap because I could make money. But at the same time, um, I had to get out of it. I mean, I came back eventually, but there was a period where I quit for about 3 or 4 years, and I had to get out of it to get my head together, to be able to come back and show everybody he's actually a decent guy. Because I mean, when I came back, I was. When I left, I probably was a bit of an a hole.
Okay.
But uh, which you have to be when you're not tough,
I
and
understand.
everybody's big and muscular and scary,
Yeah.
and some guy with giant muscles that could pound you in the ground grabs you by the arm and jerks you over to tell you how it's going to be. To me, the only reaction you can have is both hands around his neck and put him up against the wall, and you tell him how it's going to be, to send a message. Like, he didn't know that he could pound my butt in the ground
Right.
without breaking a sweat after that. But that's where I started out. Now with Guns and Radio, by the time it came along, I hadn't done a podcast in about 2 years. I was married for a few years, and then I became single again. And when I was married, my ex-wife didn't really support these ventures very much. She kind of made me feel like I was wasting my time. And then so I quit doing them, and then I got out on my own. And when I got out on my own, I started getting the itch to do a podcast again. Now, it took me many years to do Guns and Radio, even after I discovered Pod of Thunder. I loved listening to Pod of Thunder because I'm also a Kiss fan. But I was really, really hoping somebody else would come along and do this show,
Okay.
because I just wanted to listen to it. I didn't want to be on it. I wanted to listen to it. And after many, many, many years of nobody, and a Guns N' Roses podcast had come up, Appetite for Distortion with Brando, a real good friend of ours. When we came on the scene, he brought us on his show and helped us boost our audience. The GNR community has been great to us. Um, but no matter what, nobody was doing this show, and I just wanted to listen to it. Like, that's all I wanted. And so I figured, okay, nobody's going to do this show. Hell with this. I'm going to do it myself. So I sent out a message on Patreon. No, not Patreon. No, Discord. I was in a Discord server about Guns N' Roses, and I just posted a thing, said, hey, I've got an idea for a podcast. Anybody want to be a podcast co-host with me? And Chris Caputo was the first person that answered. And he and we actually recorded our first conversation ever. I didn't know this kid from Adam. We sat down and we just instantly had chemistry. Like, that's a big thing when you got a code. You can't. I've done enough podcasts to know that you can't have anybody. You can have your best friend sitting beside you, and you guys might have best friend chemistry in real life, but if you don't have that show chemistry
Right. I understand.
together, yeah, I mean, I know you do, but
Yeah.
I
No, I
don't
get.
know.
No, I get it.
But you know what I mean? If you don't have that being able to have a show chemistry together, it's never going to work. You're going to struggle through it until one of you has to have that hateful conversation, or you quit doing the show and you abandon the idea altogether.
Right.
Caputo and I had instant chemistry. We don't really hang out. We don't know each other all that well. I mean, I think of him as a friend.
Yeah.
I don't make a decision that has anything to do with the podcast without asking him first. But I mean, he came on and we just had that instant. And I think that's a lot of too. I think that really helps our relationship for the podcast, is the fact that we don't have to worry about hurting the other's feelings because we don't hang out afterwards. So
Right.
if I'm doing something and he's like, yo, bro, you're screwing this up, he can feel like he can just tell me,
Interesting.
and vice versa. Like, I never would tell him that. I would just try to
Yeah.
find ways to work around. But I need somebody to tell me when I'm screwing up. So
You know what's interesting, Dustin, is over 5 years ago, I was doing a Doctor Who podcast. I had done a Castle podcast. With Nathan Fillion's show, we were doing
yeah,
episodes.
Miss Firefly.
Yeah, oh, yes, so much. Did a Farscape I was one of the guys on a Farscape podcast. You
Never
know,
seen Farscape
yeah.
though.
So I was the newbie. That was the premise. They had two co-hosts. They would have someone who'd seen every episode of Farscape, and then me who'd never seen anything, and I was watching them in chronological order. And so you'd have a newbie and an expert, and it was
Oh,
no
that's a really
spoilers.
good. I like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, it was a really good concept. And so, um, so I Lynette Carolla, Adam Carolla's wife, had done 3 or 4 episodes where she had interviewed friends of hers and Adam that were Springsteen fans, including Phil Rosenthal, who was the co-creator of Everyone Loves Raymond. And they didn't talk anything about their celebrity. They just talked about how much they loved Bruce and his music. And then she quit doing them. And I went, God, I really want to have that podcast. And so, in the spirit of lighting a candle instead of cursing the darkness, and that's why I'm telling the story, even though my audience is going, yes, we know this story, Jesse, is I went to the guy that runs our network and I said, hey, Rob, I want to do a Bruce Springsteen podcast. And he goes, okay, what's that? And I'm like, well, I'm going to find Bruce Springsteen fans and I'm going to talk to them. How are you going to find them? I'm going to use social media. And so he told me just this recently, he hung up the phone and he looked at his wife, Martha, who was, the co-owner. And he says, so Jesse's going to do a Springsteen podcast. He says, I think we'll get a season out of it. Well, that 5 years later and 600 episodes later, and
Wow.
so, and the show has morphed, and I'm going to talk to you about y'all's, where, but from the very beginning, and this, I give Rob credit. He said, I'm listening to you talk about Bruce Springsteen, and I feel the same way about Wilco. He said, I wonder if you could have other guests join you and talk about other musicians, right? And I said, yeah, and I could call them B-side episodes,
Huh.
the
Nice.
B single, right? And so I've done that. And now through this years, I've learned that what I really do is I love talking to people that are passionate about anything, right? Like I love talking to other podcasters because 95% of them are articulate, they're interesting, they're passionate, and they make a great guest. And so that's why, as you saw, when I go to Facebook, I'm like, if you can even talk about music, we'll squeeze you into my episode. And like, look at you and we are an hour plus. And
I
I
have
hope,
that bad habit, by the
no,
way.
I hope people have enjoyed the conversation. I know I have. And I
I
hope you
have
have.
too, so I hope somebody out
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
has.
So you guys decide, you've got this chemistry, you decide to the podcast. How did you decide the format? What did you, because you're from this other podcast, so you're like, okay,
Pot of Thunder.
yeah, Pot of Thunder has a good format.
We
I think
literally ripped it off.
nothing wrong with that.
Like we to the lottery, they had a lottery. Now
Yeah,
what happened with Pot of Thunder is they eventually ran out of songs to do, so they
right.
just started doing classic rock in general. Um, but with ours, I want to make it clear: Guns and Radio, when we run out of songs to do, we're done.
Yeah.
We have a finite. It's probably about a 5 season run, especially since we do 2 a week now instead of just one. That knocked it down from 10 years to 5.
How long of us does a show usually last? An
But
episode?
the Monday show is about an hour.
Okay.
We try to keep it an hour to. We don't force it to be an
Right.
hour, but like the song will come up, and let's say, uh, for example, a few weeks, well, months ago now, there was a song called "Ship,"
Okay.
and the song "Ship," what can we do with ship? Well, we'll make a pirate. So the skit that we ended up recording, now this is funny, it's the first time I'm talking about this, because it never actually aired, but we do a skit. We open the show, we both BS for a little while, we do a skit, and then we review the song. So the skit that we had planned was I was going to dress up like a pirate, and Caputo was going to present rock stars to me, and I would decide if they looked piratey enough to be a part of my pirate crew.
Okay.
And mostly it was me insulting old rock stars and
Okay.
making jokes. It was very much a classic rock podcast disguised
Mhm.
as a
Yeah.
Guns N' Roses podcast.
Okay.
But
Little Steven would qualify.
oh yeah,
Little Steven looks like a pirate with his bandana and everything. Yep.
you'd be surprised how many of them do when you're
Yeah.
looking through the eyes of a character that's supposed to be a pirate.
Yes, I believe
Uh,
it.
but especially Sebastian Bach.
Mhm.
Um, but the we recorded the bit, and I honestly thought it was stupid, and but I was going to put it on anyway because we didn't have anything better. And then heartbreak, the day that was supposed to air, Eddie Van Halen died.
Mm.
And so we had to get together real quick before the show aired, do an emergency re-recording where we cut out the comedy skit and did a tribute to Eddie Van Halen.
Yeah.
And um, I think when you do these shows at first, they start out episode 40 is never the same show as episode 1. And
Yeah.
we're at episode 91, and it is definitely not the same show as episode
Yeah.
41. Shows, I've learned one thing I've learned in just doing them, if you stick with it, no matter how rough of a start you get, if you stick with it, a show with a cast of characters and a group of people that are together to put together this show will organically uh, have it grow its own personality.
Yes. And
And
yeah, what's interesting with me, because it's me and a guest, I've changed. I've learned, what questions work, what questions don't work. And then the thing I tell, as you and I talked about, like, if we go off on tangents, we go off on tangents.
I tend
That,
to go off on tangent on anything. So.
yeah, because I think that's what's interesting. And I heard one of the nicest compliments. A guy said, Jesse, I don't think you do a Bruce Springsteen podcast. I think you do a podcast where the host loves Bruce Springsteen. You just interview people. And
That
I said, I'll take that compliment anytime. You
is a
know,
good compliment. I
yeah,
mean, and what you do is you lure in the audience that you want
yes,
with the niche that you
right,
have.
yeah,
I wanted to make a show for the GNR community because I'm part of that community.
right.
And I know uh, I didn't expect it to grow and blow up the way it did. I've been really stunned with that. And that has been amazing. I mean, we don't get millions, we don't get Joe Rogan numbers, but good Lord, we get so much more than I ever expected for us
Well,
to get.
see, same thing for me, right? Like I used to get, you know, I'd be happy if I got, 2, 3,000 downloads for a month. And then all of a sudden, it started getting it, and I'm feeling pretty good. And then my son, who's a huge wrestling fan, sent me the link to JR and Conrad were being interviewed about their podcast. And JR's like,
Oh, I don't know if you can see it here.
yeah,
You see
ah,
that on the
yeah,
wall? Hang on, let me
yeah,
turn this. There we go.
yeah,
My autograph. That's Conrad's autograph on
yeah.
the wall.
And he's like, yeah, we get a couple 100,000 an episode. And I'm like, okay, make me feel,
There
so,
was a time where I'd be happy with 100 a month.
well,
Like,
and the reality is, Dustin, and I don't know, I won't speak for you, but if no one listened and I'm still having fun, I'm okay with it.
I'm fine with it
I
too.
like, I would not have talked to you, and you and I've got to exchange some laughs and share some stories, and you've shared a little bit of your personal background that you like said, what the F? I don't ever talk about this, right? And I think, like, I was lucky enough, I had a guy who was huge in the YouTube community. He did the YouTube website and all this
Okay.
stuff. And
There's a
he,
band I don't get. You talk about
yeah,
bands you don't
yeah.
get. I
And
sold one of their records. I bought just
yeah,
side story. I
no,
bought a
please.
U2 record from a flea market. I bought four of them
Mhm.
for $1 each from a flea market, not knowing jack about U2. I put these mugs on eBay just to try to get a
Yeah.
little bit of money. I didn't sell one of those records for less than $300, and to this day, I have no idea what records those were.
Oh, how funny. Well, Matt ended up talking about why he broke up with you too. He ended up not liking them anymore and became a Gang of Youths fan, the band
Hmm,
out of Australia.
okay.
And so, and at the end of it, he says, I've never talked about this before. He said, I'm really going to look forward to it because people ask me all the time, well, why did you quit listening to you too? And he says, now I'm going to be able to say, here, listen to Jesse's podcast. All right. So going back to the band, you talk about seeing him coming up in the Springsteen community because of his long career and his diverse catalog. We are most fans are chasing songs. I haven't got to hear this song live. For example, the song we're going to talk in a little bit, the first 7 times I saw Bruce live, I never heard him do Thunder Road live.
Oh
It
wow.
just luck of the draw. Is there songs that you're chasing? Like you go in there and you go, man, if I could get this one or this one, I'd feel pretty blessed.
There was a time where I can think of two songs that I chased actively.
Mhm.
Uh, that I eventually got both of them twice, and a third one. No, I'm sorry, three songs, because one I used to say because I was like, yeah, they're never going to actually play that, and then they did. um, which they'd only played it four times live ever in the history of the band, and I was there for two of them.
Wow.
At that time. They'd only ever played it twice live, and then they played it two more times at two shows I was at back to back. But now it's more of I guess I should go chronologically answer this question. It used to be um, Dead Horse. They would cover. Sometimes they would cover not Dead Horse. God dang. They would cover Dead Flowers by the,
Hmm.
and they only did it every now and then. It seems like every show after or before the one I had tickets for, they'd play Dead Flowers, and I would never get to hear Dead Flowers. And I loved that song, especially Gilby Clarke's version of it, which was very similar to the Guns N' Roses version. And they would, and so when I finally got to see Dead Flowers, I remember just being so overjoyed. And it really does make a difference when you are chasing a song and you get that song. The feeling of those first couple of notes and realizing what you're getting
Yeah.
is, and you got to remember, back in these days, I was front row center. I'd get at the building at 7 o'clock in the morning for a show that didn't open the doors till 9,
Hmm.
so that I could be right in front of the stage. So this was back then. I mean, I buy seats now because I'm old and I ain't got time for that crap no more. But
Yeah.
back then, I was front row center. So when that all came down and they played Dead Flowers, and I got them all, every song I ever wanted to hear, I got in Vegas. I got
Wow.
Dead Flowers in Vegas. And the other one, I would always say I either want to hear Dead Flowers or There Was a Time. There Was a Time is probably one of the most underrated songs in all of rock and roll. Nobody's heard this song,
Okay.
but it opens up with this angelic voice that sings a couple of notes. And I am convinced. I know better than this because it's not the kind of guy Axl Rose is, but I know better than this. But I am still convinced that we had something to do with them playing There Was a Time the first time I saw them
Okay.
in Vegas, because I was in the front row with, and we'd been there. They opened the doors at like 8. GNR didn't go on till freaking midnight. I had plenty of time and hanging out with these group of people, these group of gunners from the front row. And by this point, I know everybody's screen name. It's like, oh yeah, you called me a dick in the forum. Oh yeah, oh come on, man. Yeah,
Yeah.
like, you know what I mean? Like we had trolled each other online in the past, and now we're sitting here being best friends, uh, and like that kind of crap.
Sure.
So by the time the band actually went on, I had made a huge group of friends just around me of people that knew me from the message boards and
Sure.
things like that. I wasn't doing the podcast at the time, but I was an active message board poster. And uh, I don't remember what song they just finished, but the lights hadn't gone down yet. And I screamed as loud as I could, "There was a time." And then when I did that, everybody around me started chanting, "There was a time, there was a time, there was a time." And I saw Axel. Axel has a button on stage that you would miss it if you're not looking for it. But he steps on that button and he talks into his microphone, and then everybody can hear him except us. And I saw Axel step on his button, say something into the microphone, and that's when the lights went down.
Okay.
And as the lights slowly came up, it was that angel voice from the
Wow.
beginning of There Was a Time, that pre recorded angel voice that opens the song. And when I heard that and we saw that, you just hear, all I could hear was people scream and erupt around me. And then from then on, I did not hear Axl Rose sing one note of that song. What I heard was everybody around me screaming, "Broken glass and cigarette." And I was right there with them. And,
That's hilarious. That's a
and
great story. That's wonderful.
like I said, I know it's egotistical and it's kind of stupid to believe that we had anything to do with that.
Right.
But it kind of lines up in my head
Sure.
that I kind of tell at least myself that maybe we had something to do with
Yeah,
that.
I could see that. Dustin, what have I not asked you that I should have? What is the Guns N' Roses question that Guns N' Roses fans are going, I can't believe Jesse hadn't asked this damn question.
Um, God, there's a million of them. This
Okay.
band is so, you don't understand how deep this rabbit hole goes until
Okay.
you get into it. Um, I could talk to you about GNR all day. I mean,
Okay.
there's been over the years and the various what do you call it, incarnations of the band.
Right.
I've gone from being a kid in the crowd to knowing somebody on the stage to then Slash and them came back and I don't know anybody anymore.
Okay.
But I've been to parties with these dudes before. I'll tell you about a Guns N' Roses party I went to. I have
Please
actually partied with the band.
tell me. I gotta have that story.
I went to an after party in Las Vegas. Uh, my friend, there used to be a guy in the band that was the guitar, one of the guitar players, named Ron Bumblefoot Thaw. And the other guy I knew was the keyboard player, Chris Pittman. Now, when I met Chris on Facebook because my friend Rick sent me his link and was like, "Hey, man, I bet if you start talking to Pittman, that you and him could probably hit it off." So I started talking to him. I didn't believe I was actually talking to Chris Pittman. What I thought was going on was my friend Rick was screwing with me and he was getting ready to pull up a prank. So I
Yes.
would say this effed up stuff. Like I would do anything I could to try to. What I was doing was I thought Rick was baiting me. So I was baiting him into saying something that I was going to flip and turn psychotic.
Sure. Absolutely.
And then that never happened. And so I asked Chris for tickets to an after party and he said, and he gave me a generic answer, but he didn't. Or I say tickets, I say pass. It's passes.
Yeah.
You don't get tickets, you get a pass. And he didn't give me a pass, and so I said, okay, well, I'll see you there anyway. And and I thought it was Rick messing with me because Bumblefoot, uh, had given me a pass to come to this after party.
Right.
And okay, so you're going to a party with Guns N' Roses. First off, Axel's not there. You already know that. You can go ahead and rule that out. Axel's not there. DJ's, I don't remember if DJ was there or not. Dizzy's probably not there. Axel is definitely not there. Uh, but the rest of the band is, and you get to meet these guys and hang with them and just chat with them and see what they're like as people. And I will say, when I first walked in, uh, you go into this room. First off, there's a waiting room while the band. I don't know what they're doing because I wasn't there, but like you go in a waiting room for about 30 minutes to an hour before they open the doors and let you in, and you're with all these people, and everybody's somebody's cousin, mom,
Okay.
uh, brother, something like that. And then here I am. One of these things is not like the others. And you're waiting to go in and everything. And then you go in. And I remember this because, like, I had mentally prepared myself for this. Like, there's going to be cocaine. This is Vegas. There's going to be blow. There's probably going to be some stripper. I'm going to at least see some titties before I go. Like,
Okay.
there's going to be something going.
There's greatness. There's going to be wildness. Yes.
Craziness that I, at this point, was almost too old for. But if this was my last big, crazy party shebang, what a
Right.
hell of a time to go. So I mentally prepared myself for the stuff I was going to see. I was like, you're going to see some stuff. It's Guns N' Roses, dude. You're going to see some
This
wild
is going to be some craziness. Yes.
stuff. So we get in there, and the first thing I noticed is on each side of the room there was a table, a very long table on each side. One side had a buffet style of food that hadn't been touched, and then at the very end there was like a big salad bowl that had been scraped clean, and then the other side was all of this booze, like all these bottles of various liqueurs. Not any of it had been touched, but at the end was a cooler that had sodas in it, and not one Diet Coke was to be found. And everywhere you look around, there's somebody eating a salad and drinking a Diet Coke. And then I remembered, oh yeah, it's 2012. Not 1986.
I love that. That is a great story.
And we ended up just sitting on the couch and talking about music the whole time. At some point, one of them complained that the music that was playing was too loud. And I was like, you know what? That's my kind of party.
That is their kind of party. That's awesome. That is great. Oh, that's a perfect way.
And then Pittman came in. Now, the only one that got drunk, he got drunk somewhere else and then came to the party. Mm-hmm. Chris Pittman comes in and he is drunk and he looks at me and we lock eyes. And then he goes, Dustin! And he gives me a huge hug. And I was like, oh my God, he knows my name.
This is not my friend jacking with me. This is, yeah.
And he hugs me and he goes, the next words out of his mouth is, where's Rick? Because he knew wherever I went, you would see Rick with me.
Oh, how funny.
He's over there talking to Bumblefoot. So then he goes over and hugs Rick and everything. And I was like, oh, that's so cool. Chris Pittman knows my name. And then it hadn't clicked that I've been talking to this guy for months, just texting back and forth. Mm-hmm. And then he comes over and he kind of gets quiet to me. And he's like, listen, man, I'm sorry I couldn't get you passes to this show, but all these people here are my family and they were coming into town. And I was like, dude, you ain't got to make excuses. He goes, well, looks like you were right. Cause I said, I'll see you there anyway. He goes, well, it looks like you were right. You found a way in.
So Dustin, is it fair to ask, and like I said, I am a casual fan at best. Is it fair to ask your favorite, you mentioned incarnation of the band? Or are you just a fan of all of them?
I'm a fan of all of them to an extent.
Okay.
My favorite incarnation, I would be a liar if I said it was anything other than Axl Rose, Dizzy Reed, of course, Frank, DJ Ashba, Bumblefoot, Tommy Stinson, Chris Pittman.
Okay.
And I feel like I'm forgetting somebody. Richard Fortis.
Okay.
That era is the era that I saw, that I partied with, that I got to know. They
Hmm.
knew who I was. Um, uh, I pulled kind of a stupid kid move when I first met them, which I don't ever recommend doing. I think it's a dick move, and I would never do it today in hindsight. But I found the hotel they were in, and I met them at the hotel.
Hmm.
Dick move on my part. Should have never done that. But that's only in hindsight. Security came to throw me out, and they first off, they interfered and wouldn't let security throw me out. When security said, we're going to throw him out anyway, they said, okay, fuck it, we'll go with you. And so then we
Wow.
all went across the street and we hung out and, chatted and
Yeah.
everything. That was the first time I met the band. That incarnation of the band just, even though it wasn't the original, it was hired hands. And yeah, you had Axel there, who was definitely the boss, had the final say over everything. But you had a group of people on stage that loved playing music.
Okay.
And to me, since Slash and Duff came back, I love Slash and Duff, but just some of the magic of going to see GNR live um, feels like it's gone.
Okay.
And I feel like it's a cash grab because I've seen him three times now since the reunion. I don't know how you're going to have, three original members come back of the five and call that a reunion, but okay,
Yeah.
we'll go with it. Um, I didn't say I wasn't critical of my favorite band,
No, no, no. I get it.
but the the reunion era, or the not in this lifetime era, or whatever you want to call it, of the band, was the first. I will say the first show I ever saw was amazing. Hearing Slash play Chinese Democracy was freaking fanboy,
Sure.
mind blowing, insane. After a while, that lost its magic, and it just feels like a cash grab because tickets went from I could get in the front row for $150. Now it's like $400 to get in the front row.
Yeah.
I could get VIP passes for $300. Now it's like 1,000 and some BS. Like
Yeah.
to not even get the same experience that I got as a VIP. As a VIP, I got to party with these guys. I got to sit down on a couch, talk to them like I'm talking to you, just like we were old friends with
Yeah.
no kind of time limit. And I didn't pay a dime. This was sent to me because I asked for it. And now it's like $400 for a picture, a handshake, next.
Yeah.
Like it just feels like a cash grab. And I feel like there's something disingenuous about it. And I don't know that there is. And I'm
Right.
really glad that Axel and Slash and Duff have reconciled because in my own life, I've had grudges that lasted for years and years and years. And when they're over, even if you don't think about it every day, it does feel like there's just a weight that's lifted. And you want that for
Yeah.
somebody
That
else.
makes sense. Yeah. Absolutely.
You want these guys back together. You want them playing the music. But after a while, when it's just the same old stuff week after week and day after day, I mean, these guys haven't put out a new album in years. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, eventually it gets to being like, this is a cash grab. You're not, which I get it. That I am the minority. The die-hard Guns N' Roses fan is the minority. The majority of the fans are the casual people that know Paradise City, Welcome to the Jungle, Sweet Child of Mine, November Rain. Like that is the majority of GNR fans.
Yeah.
And when that is the audience that you're appealing to, it just felt like with the old lineup, it felt like they were trying to appeal to my demographic in the
Hmm.
audience. And if the masses liked it, cool. If they didn't, whatever, screw them. We got these guys and we're going to entertain
Yeah.
them. Now it feels like let's appeal to the masses. Screw these new guys who are these guys that have been with us, for all these years. Um, and I get it; they're a nostalgia band.
Yeah.
Most people don't want a new Guns record, but I am not most people.
And I think, to bring it back to Bruce for a moment, that's one of the things that I most admire about him is, you know, 2019 he put out Western Stars, which was an album that sounds like it could be Glenn Campbell and Jimmy Webb was filled with orchestra. And then, in October of this past year, he did Letter to You, which was an E Street band. And, they're still putting out new albums. He's still pushing himself as an artist. And I think that's to be admired, whether you like the new albums or not, which I'm biased. I host a freaking Springsteen podcast. Of course I'm going to love it. Right. But, I love that he is still out there trying, and he is still making new music and trying to scratch that creative itch.
I think that now Slash and Duff are always putting out new music
Yeah.
separately from Guns N' Roses. But when Axel has the final say, I don't know what's the holdup. Like, I don't know
Maybe
what's going
that's interesting. Good.
on. But nobody ever talks about it because they're all signed to secret agreements when it
Yeah.
comes to recording stuff and stuff like this. So, and then Axel doesn't talk about it, so nobody else does. So, I mean, who knows what's going on? I'm not going to say that Axel has lost his passion for it or anything like that because I don't want to believe that. I want to
Yeah.
believe that Axel's my hero, man. Like he's been
Yeah.
my uh when you're a little kid that grew up like I grew up, and then you got this guy that's everything you're not, throwing up the middle finger and
Mhm.
saying "f you" to everybody.
Yeah.
Like I had two heroes growing up: Stone Cold Steve Austin and Axl Rose, and I don't want to believe for a second that either one of them has lost what they had. It's just
So
something
I'm gonna
different.
bore you for a minute, or bore my audience for a moment. Um, as I talked about, my son is a huge wrestling fan, and every once in a while he brings up that he was in sixth, seventh grade, and WrestleMania was going to be at the Astrodome.
Oh,
The
nice.
Rock versus Stone Cold Austin.
So this is 20. So is this 17 or 18? What year are we talking?
I'm trying to think.
Maybe it
Um,
was 19.
yeah, and I'm looking up as we talk. So I tell him, okay, tell you what, you get straight A's. I'll take you to WrestleMania because it's going to be in Houston.
Ooh. Okay,
And
that's 17.
yeah, and he's and I tell my wife Linda, like, yeah, like, I'm go ahead and buying the tickets, whether he gets straight A's or not. This is something he wants so much. We're gonna go. And so we go there. We go to the, whatever you call the wrestle, you know, arena
Access.
beforehand. Yeah, access. The big, there's all the vendors and all the stuff.
It's like a festival.
It is, and we're going, and I know nothing about wrestling. Nothing, and we're going, and Chris is maybe 10 or 11, right? Like, let's see. So he was born in 89, so this is 2001. So I guess he's 11, maybe 12, and so he's like, "Dad, can I shoot the finger?" I don't care. So man, he's just shooting the finger off, and he's screaming, "Asshole!" And Stone Cold turned heel. You don't
I was
understand,
just
Dad,
about to
right?
say.
Yes.
I was just about to say, did he cry when Stone Cold turned on him?
Oh, he was so and he's like, "You just don't understand." And I swear, once a year he'll be spending the night, and he'll pull up, on WWE's app, and we'll watch that match. And he was like, "And we're there." He's had a few pops, and he's feeling. And he said, Dad, you'll never understand how much that meant to me as a kid, and still, you know.
I couldn't imagine. That's like Disney World.
Yeah, it was. My other favorite wrestling story is Mick Foley was on he the sports station here in Dallas is called The Ticket, and they do ticket stock, which is basically, a 2-day convention, and they bring in celebrities and you get free autographs. And so Mick Foley is on, and they're interviewing him, Mick. and he said, I have a background in Dallas. I used to wrestle at the Sportatorium. He said, and then back, he said, funny story, right? He said, my girlfriend at the time came to me and said, Mick, is wrestling predetermined? Because you don't use the F word, right?
No, no.
And he goes, well, why are you asking? She goes, well, you're in a winner take all, loser lose town match later today, and everything you own is in your station wagon. He's like, well, so, and I just love that story so much. It's just great.
It's a thing, man. Like I tell when I was in the business, I mean, I had an excuse for everything. Like, how
Yeah.
come they stomp when they punch? I used to say, how come a baseball player stomps when he throws the ball?
Yeah.
Because you rear back and you get like I had an answer for
Yeah.
everything. To be as everybody knew what was going on, but that didn't mean I was going to admit it.
Right.
There were times when I would talk to parents and stuff like that after the show and stuff like and I rarely talk to the fans just because I was a heel.
Yeah.
And if you wanted to talk to me, and I know it doesn't seem like it because I do all this stuff, but I have a little touch of the social anxiety.
Sure.
So it's really hard for me to do whenever
Mhm.
we would do signings and stuff like that, or meet and greets and stuff like that. There was shows where we would bring people into a certain area that was backstage so they could do the thing, get a picture with it and everything. And I never could get through those because I don't know. I just having a bit of anxiety to it.
Yeah.
Um, but in the few times I've met the people that watch the shows and things like that, one of the things that come up is, I bring my kids to this show and they really believe in it. And I'm like, yeah, well, they're kids. They think what they see, that's our prime demographic. At the end of the day, kids, regardless of what they say, the attitude era with the boobs and the middle finger, that was directed at your kids.
Yeah.
Don't ever for a second think it wouldn't.
Yeah.
Wrestling has always been directed for kids in the 90s wanted something different than kids today want.
Right.
That's why. And we didn't have internet porn. We had to get what little bit of doses of cleavage we could get where
Exactly.
we could get
Yes,
it.
I get it.
So when internet porn came along, wrestling cleaned up its act because then that need for the hormonal teenage boy was filled somewhere else.
Right.
But the thing I tell parents and stuff, if your kid believes in this crap, let them believe in it. It's like Santa Claus. Let them believe in it. They'll figure it out. They'll grow up and they'll figure it out. And I used to say because nobody's that stupid, and then I started seeing how many old people think it's real. And it's like, oh.
Well, and the only thing you would worry about, but you're going to worry about that no matter what, is someone hurting themselves. But but the same thing no matter what sport, right? You got to be careful with your kids.
My answer for that was, if your kids are doing this and they're getting hurt, why don't you come up here to our academy and pay me to teach them how to do it safely?
Ah, I like that. That's nice. Absolutely.
I mean, it was a service we offered.
Absolutely.
And if they could pass our classes and graduate, which a lot of them did, they could come up and be on our show.
Oh, how funny.
And I love now as much as I hated doing meet and greets, I loved working with the kids in the school because they didn't know me and they'd always heard tell that I was a big a-hole because I used to be.
Yeah.
And for all they knew I was, because I always was to them, because it was keeping up a gimmick.
Right.
Because what they didn't know is when I would do something to them and it would really tick them off, and I'd leave and they'd be like, man, that guy is an a-hole. Everybody, even their trainer, was laughing at them behind their back because we was all in on the joke. My favorite thing I ever did, there's two. We got we used to get them with, well, actually there's three. I'm just going to tell you three quick stories. There's the old belt trick, which you've probably heard on WWE by now, which ticks me off because WWE Network's giving away the old belt trick, so you can't get new kids with that. When a kid wins their first title, and it's always like a tag team title or some second or third tier belt that don't really matter. It's always a big deal to them. So you come up to them and you give them this speech like, "You're the champion now. You represent our company and everything we work for. This ain't, something you do on the weekend anymore. This is you represent us now. So if and we need you to understand that if you're going to be our champion, you're going to have to represent us everywhere we go. So when you come up to Huddle House to eat with us tonight, make sure you wear the belt and wear it in the restaurant with and then come in wear it." We would laugh. Like, oh, we got him. And that was an old one. My second favorite one, I used to, one day I came to a show and I just cashed my tax return. This is long before I had a bank account. So I
Yeah.
just cashed my tax return, had it in my pocket, and then went to work and I was backstage. Well, then they started passing out the envelopes, and I had about $500 or $600 more in my wallet than I normally had, and nobody was looking at me. So I took my envelope and I took the $600 out of my wallet and stuck it down in my envelope, sealed it back, stuck it in my pocket. So then I waited for all the wrestlers in the main event to be over, so all the wrestlers would be gathered around. We're like, yeah, all right. So then the promoter passed out. I saw the promoter go through passing out the rest of the envelopes, which was your pay for the night.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, well, boys, and everybody's opening theirs, counting, and I waited for the right time. Everybody was looking at me, and I pulled out my envelope, tore it open. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right. Well, we're good. Well, fellas, I'll see y'all next week. Promoter calls up. What the hell did you do?
Oh, just having a little fun. Yes, that's hilarious.
And my favorite one. I used to screw with these kids in training all the time because they didn't know me from Adam. They didn't know what I
Yeah.
was telling them was,
Right.
BS. So my favorite one I ever did was there was a kid in Boonville that was in the academy training, and I was walking through, and I always dress really nice when I'm going to shows. Like, my gimmick might be ripped up jeans and leather jackets that night, but I'm going to come in dressed like somebody that makes a living doing this. So I come in and I've got $300 shades on and a nice suit, and I'm dragging this backpack or this bag behind me that's got ripped up jeans and Converse in it for me
Yeah.
to change into later. And I stop at the ring and I slowly remove my sunglasses and I stand there and I watch them. And I watch them train. I don't know if any of this will actually make it in the podcast, but I'm going to get it out. And I got to notice that one kid in the ring was wearing shoes. Nobody else was wearing shoes but this one kid, because I don't know what led to it,
Yeah.
but that was my spark. So I went up to this kid and I went, and then the referee looked at him and said, "Dustin wants to talk to you." And I'm standing over there because they all knew what I was going to do. They all knew I was going to screw with him, so pretend I'm a big deal. And so I said, "How long you been in training, kid?" And he said, "Oh, about, cause that long enough to know what the hell you're doing, right? So let me ask you something, kid. Why the hell are you wearing shoes in my ring?" And he
Yeah.
was like, what? I said, "Look around the ring. Do you see anybody here that knows what the hell they're doing wearing shoes in my ring?" And then, this wasn't planned. Uh, we just got a new ring that night, by the way.
Hmm.
So the champion of the show, his name at the time was Max Victory. He's the champ. He shows up. He comes in, doesn't know I'm screwing with this kid. He just walks in the door and is oblivious. And he's like, "Oh, sweet, we got a new ring." Now he's wanting to test it out and see how it feels before
Sure.
he gets slammed in it. So he like throws his bag down. He jumps in the ring. He kicks off his shoes, and then he runs or does a couple of bumps just to get a feel for the ring. And when he kicked off his shoes, that sold the joke. And
Oh
I
yeah.
look,
Sure.
and in my head, I am just dying, but in my
Sure.
face, I'm poker facing like crazy. And I said, "I'm gonna tell you something, kid. I'm a nice guy, so I'm going to give you one chance. If I come back out here and I see you wearing shoes in my ring again, you think I want to go in here and work in all your dirty filth that you're bringing into my ring? If I come out here again and I see you wearing shoes in my ring again, I'm going to bust your kneecaps. And then I picked up my bag and I walked in the back. And when I walked behind the curtain, Max had already come back and he's dropped his stuff off. And I immediately throw my bag down. I'm running across the locker room and I'm grabbing Max. He's like, "Where are we going?" I was like, "Come on, hurry up." Because we had a camera pointed at the ring and what we call the gorilla position on the
Yeah.
other side where you walk through for the
Sure.
entrance lights and stuff. So I ran over to Gorilla where the where the TV was so we could see the ring. And I'm sitting there watching, and then the kid standing there like this. It took 30 seconds for me to run back there,
Yeah.
probably less. And Max is like, What are we looking for?" I was like, just wait. And then I'm watching and I'm going, and then he kicks off his shoes and get back in the ring. And when the kid kicked his shoes off, I fell on the ground laughing. And then I told Max about what happened, and he was like, "Dude, I didn't even know."
Yeah, that's hilarious.
So
That's great.
the next night we're in another town, and I see the trainer that was working with the kid, and I said, "You've been working with the kids tonight at all?" Because that show I showed up late for because I had another gig.
Yeah.
But I showed up late, and I was like, uh, "Have you been working with the kids from last night at all?" Because I was getting ready to ask. And he
Mhm.
goes, "Oh my God, yes." He goes, "What the hell did you say to that poor boy?" And so I told him, and he was like, "Man, you pissed him off." What I was like, "Oh, what'd you tell him?" I was like, "What'd you?" I said, "First off, what did he say?" And he goes, "That guy's an a-hole. He threatened to bust my kneecaps if I didn't take my shoes off." And he knew when he heard "take your shoes off" that was a stupid thing because we don't have that rule.
Yeah.
So he knew immediately when the kid told him what was going on, what happened. And so he said, "I hope I don't run into him again." And all this, because then I made him get me drinks and stuff all night.
Oh, how hilarious. That's
Because
great.
there are runners when we're
Sure. Yeah.
to get us snacks and stuff. But then I said, "What did you tell him?" Because he's the trainer, he's the mentor, he's the one
Yeah.
that's got to take this BS that I've created and smooth it out now. So I was like, "What did you tell him?" He goes, "I said, dude, he is effing with you."
That's awesome.
I said, "What you don't want to happen is you don't want to come up in here and these guys don't talk to you because then they don't like you."
Right. That's great. I love that. All right. Before I let you go, I got to ask you the Mary question.
Mary question.
Yeah. So if you're listening and you're going, "Hey, I'm a fan of Dustin's, but I don't know what the Mary question is," let me explain. So Jay Armstrong is an honors English teacher
Oh,
in,
hi, Mom, by the way, if that's the case.
yes, uh, honors English teacher in the Philadelphia area. He just recently retired, but he used to spend 2 days. He would have his seniors in the honors English class take Thunder Road, Bruce's song, break down, look at the lyrics, break down the imagery, the themes of the song. And then at the end of the 2 days, he would look at the class and say, "Does Mary get in the car?" So, Dustin, that is your question. Does Mary get in the car at the end of Thunder Road?
I had a feeling that there was going to be a lot more to it than what you told me when you first told me to listen to that song. Before the show, he did tell me to listen to that song, and he did tell me he was going to ask me that, but that's all he told me. And I had a feeling it was going to be something like that this was going to be a huge philosophical thing that is going to go way over my head. And first off, I've never heard the song Thunder Road before today. I listened to it for the first time today, which led me to believe that maybe there's more in this catalog. Because I've heard "Born in the USA" and the shit, or the stuff that you know what I'm talking
Yeah,
about.
exactly. Yes.
We've already covered that, so I haven't really gotten deep into the catalog. But I honestly, uh, I was like, man, if I needed more songs like this, I mean, because I ain't that big of a Springsteen fan. Because when you first
Right.
brought me on, we've toyed with the idea of you and I getting together and doing this
Yes.
in the past. And I think at some point at Bruce Springsteen, I was like, Bruce Springsteen, I don't really want to do
Right.
that. But when you gave me Thunder Road to listen to, I was like, there's maybe something to this that I didn't see before. Because I'd never heard that song, and I really, really like that song better than anything I've ever heard by Bruce Springsteen, by the way. So that tells me the deep cuts are better than what they play on the radio.
Sure.
Uh, just like GNR, by the way.
Absolutely.
So I listened to this song, and as I would listen to it, my brain was processing the question, and I would see it would go sometimes into a really philosophical place, and then sometimes it would go into a really effed up, I'm going to be screwed up, but I'm going to be funny when I answer this question kind of place. Like when he talks about how he's got his guitar tuned up, and that's going to kind of lure her in like the
Yeah.
Pied Piper.
Yeah.
Like I thought I could make something real funny out of that. But then I got my answer at
Okay.
the tail end of the song. I got when I listen to music, a lot of times I'll get a feeling and I'll get sometimes even a scene. I don't know if you've ever heard of the band My Chemical Romance. It's not
Sure.
really classic rock, but sometimes their music is music that'll put like a movie that will
Yes.
play in my mind when I listen to it.
Absolutely.
And um when I listened to this song, it was a very similar thing that was going on in my head. There was sort of a movie that was happening in my mind. And I feel like uh, in a movie, when something ends on a sad note, it doesn't matter how rocking and how many beats you had when it's going on. When something sad's going to go on, you're going to get that David Banner walking away at the end of The Incredible Hulk, blues,
Sure. Absolutely.
calming. Maybe it's gonna all be okay, but for now, I don't feel happy. Kind
Right.
of note to be left on.
Okay.
I feel like she got in the car because of that guitar solo at the end. The character that's playing that guitar is way too happy for her to have not gotten in the car.
So first off, great answer. So what I need to share with you is I had a guy on um, earlier last year, and he said it depends, Jesse. And he's giving the answer almost to you. He says when it's the E Street Band playing it, and at the end you have the guitar and the sax solo, it is a song of triumph.
Yeah, that's what I felt like. Like
Yes,
victorious. That was the word I
yeah.
was.
When Bruce does it solo, and he gets to the end, and he goes na 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 na, and it's
Mm.
just him humming at the end. She didn't get the car, and he's driving off.
I see. I didn't hear that version though.
No,
I
you
heard the
didn't.
album
So
version.
that you can go listen to an acoustical version and see if you agree. Um,
Well, which
I
came first, the acoustic or the album?
and it's the album, right?
So then she's left by then.
Yes.
By then, their happy time has come and go, and in
Yes.
and in the acoustic version is a completely different story because now he is recounting it and he's living all the good times in his memories again. And then he gets to the end because like you can be with your best friend talking
Sure.
about old times and how great things, and then you always end with good times. Good.
I love that. I love that. All right,
Two
Dustin.
separate songs, not
All
even
right.
the same.
If someone wants to reach you, how can they?
I'm pretty easy to get in touch with. Oh, that's a lie. I do my best to be available on. We have a Discord server. Our website is gunsnradio.com. That is the primary place where you can get links. If you go to any of our podcasts, we're available on Spotify, we're available on Pandora, wherever you get podcasts, as long as it's not SoundCloud, because I ain't paying $20 a month for something I can get for free from a better service like Spotify or Pandora
Okay.
or Apple. But if you go to just about anywhere you get the podcast and you look up Guns and Radio, in the description, there will always be an invite to our Discord server. If you come into our Discord server, I do my best to answer all of those. Or if you want to talk to me directly, every time somebody joins our Patreon page for only $5 a month, I will personally call you and tell you thank you, and then we can talk for as long as you want about Bruce Springsteen, wrestling, Guns N' Roses, Whether or not your mom looks good, and I'm probably going to ask you what your mom looked like because I have a mom thing going
Okay,
on.
I understand.
I'm kidding.
The,
Old joke,
yes.
but um,
So,
that's the best way. And I'm
sounds
on
great.
Twitter at Dustin Burcham. I don't use my stage name on Twitter. I'm at Dustin Burcham on Twitter. Um, Facebook, Guns and Radio Pod,
Okay.
Instagram at Guns and Radio Pod. Probably if you want to talk to me directly, it's weird. I hadn't thought about it. Twitter is probably where you get the realest me.
Okay.
Twitter and Discord is the best way. If
Okay.
somebody out there for some reason wants to talk to this jackass, this is how you do
Okay.
it.
Well, I recommend checking out the podcast. It, I do think after we finish recording, we will spend a few minutes, though it is getting late for me.
Me
It
too. I
is
got to work.
yeah, me too. I got a school night. We will exchange some songs, and we'll have you come back, in 4 to 6 weeks, and I'll tell you what I think of 5 Guns N' Roses songs, and I'll give you 5, deep cuts of Springsteen's, and we'll have another
Okay.
discussion. I think that would be great.
Yeah, that'd
Um,
be awesome.
you have been a wonderful guest. I appreciate you so much. Thank you
Thank you
for
for
all
having me
your
and
time.
giving me the platform to promote my show and just BS for a little
I
while. It
hope
was
you had
nice.
fun. I did. I know I
I
did.
did.
All right, listeners, you please be safe. Remember to social distance. Remember to wash your hands. Wear a mask. Let's all be good to each other because that's the only way we're going to get through this. For now, thank you so much, and we will talk to you soon. Goodbye. And there we are. We're out. Thank you, sir.
All
I
right.
did not mean to go 2 hours.